Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to a third episode of Good Ideas with Good People. And this time we are addressing a new topic, and that is science of consciousness. How can understanding what consciousness is and also putting it into practice can make us into better people, and why not can maybe transform our society. Understanding can change our world, and today we have two very special guests who have been making significant efforts towards understanding what consciousness is and understanding what consciousness is through experience by becoming the embodiment of the ones that live in a conscious way. So, our first guest is Neville Hodgkinson. He lives in the United Kingdom, in Oxford, and he has been on a spiritual journey for exactly 45 years. Congratulations, Neville, is almost a lifetime, or maybe a little bit less than lifetime of anyone. So is an amazing attainment for 45 years to make effort to change yourself and to also share that with many others. And Neville had career before starting the spiritual journey where he was a medical correspondent for many well-known newspapers in the United Kingdom, and he continued that career through his spiritual journey. So, very warm welcome, and thank you for creating the time to be with us today. Our second guest is Marvin Atudorei, based in Bucharest, in Romania. And again, an extraordinary journey, a journey through so many different areas of life, but all of them I feel connected by the thread of love for humanity. Marvin, you come across as someone who really wants to help his human fellows. And I'm sure you do have an impact, at least for the Romanian humans in that society. So you have been through different professions, different communities, and now on a spiritual journey for a while. And you are also, I know, interested in politics and understanding the big secrets of this world. And what can we say? We wish you good luck. And we hope that through the spiritual journey, you will be able to understand a little bit more of that secrets. I'm sure spirituality can help everyone to understand themselves and understand the world. So, very warm welcome. And I would like to invite each one of you to speak maybe 5 to 10 minutes about what you feel is consciousness, what are the fundamentals of consciousness, how is understanding consciousness helping us to become better people. Who would like to start?
You choose. You decide, Joanna. I was.
You can go first.
What did you say? Sorry, you're freezing every now and then. We're losing sound, and the picture freezes a little occasionally.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Would Neville like to start?
Okay. Let me begin by saying that I'm looking forward to this conversation. I very much admire, from the little I've seen already of Marvin's journey, how he is trying to tell us that a deeper understanding of the human being, and not just understanding, but experience of what it means to be human, would immeasurably improve the quality of political decision making. And he's not.
I can't hear you anymore, Neville.
Yeah, I wonder if it's Neville's system that Neville, try again. It was, you are muted, Neville.
Was I muted throughout?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that I've been looking forward to seeing Marvin again. I'm very much interested in his experience of understanding, but more than understanding, actually bringing into practice the idea that a deeper understanding of the human being and a deeper experience of what it means to be human would be of immeasurable value in improving politics and political decision making. That's a field that I'm not connected with, other than to have seen through work as a medical correspondent how, when some very major medical issues arise, such as COVID and some years back AIDS, an enormous amount of unnecessary fear-mongering and massive waste of public resources, and also a lot of harm being done to many different sectors of society by some very ill-advised decision-making. And not just ill-advised, because the good advice was there, but there was a kind of determination in both of those instances to ignore what really the science was saying in favor of something that met some more some agendas that were not of value to society in general. So this was a very deep experience over a number of years, showing me that despite the wonders that modern medicine can do, there are some very, very major downsides to the way the state medicine and the whole practice of medicine is set up currently. I've worked for many years as a medical correspondent, and I rather loved the field. I loved doctors. They're very open. I wasn't trained in medicine, but when I first got the job as a medical correspondent, I studied the journals quite intensely for about 6 months in order to understand the language and the debates. And it's a very open profession with a lot of interesting stories, and always with that human dimension there. So I'm appreciative of the field, but I also know how much many doctors and health workers suffer from a system that encourages them to treat people as numbers in a computer rather than as people, or as recipients for pills or procedures, rather than as people suffering from the constraints of everyday life. So that's something of my own background in this area. Yes, consciousness has interested me from a theoretical point of view, partly because when I came across the spiritual journey, I had a very materialistic outlook, and I felt the beauty of purity, one could call it, of pure consciousness. I met some yogis who'd practiced intensely and dedicatedly, removing obstructions from their humanity, emerging the total goodness that lies at the root of every human being. And I felt that intensely, and it brought back and alive in me the desire to be like that. But I had a different kind of programming in my head that got in the way of that, and that was this very materialistic scientific outlook. So it took me many years to make the shift across from that materialism to a deeper understanding of the scientific validity of a deeper perspective. And that has accelerated somewhat recently through a couple of events just to put on the table. One was I went to a conference on the science of consciousness in Barcelona, 6 days. A lot of the talks were quite technical, but the last talk the very last, on the last day, was from a very distinguished professor. He's not a professor, he's an Italian physicist who was the first to invent the first commercialized microprocessor, a guy called Federico Faggin. And his talk was wonderful. He was really very clear that consciousness is distinct from matter. And if we lose that sense of distinction, we disempower ourselves. We become victims of matter. If we empower ourselves again with the understanding that consciousness really is distinct from matter, although of course intimately related to it in a living creature, then if we get that power back, we have a genuine choice about how we exercise our will on a day-by-day basis over our thoughts and feelings. So negative thoughts and feelings, of which many have become habitual, we can remove them when we have that power, and we can embrace the positive, which is so good for our health, and which also is good for everyone else and for our decision making, because when we're feeling depleted, our decision making also falls short. One of the things from that conference, they said that they started these conferences, I think 20 years ago. The study of the previously science had said consciousness is not something we can look at. It's just sort of subjective matter, and the world outside, energy, all of those things we can look at, but we can't talk about consciousness because it's just something unscientific. And when some 30 or 40 years ago, there started to be techniques for looking at what was happening in the brain with changes in consciousness, it suddenly became a subject that, oh, well, we can study this. And so we get grants suddenly the science of consciousness became something of interest. When it began some 30 or 40 years ago, so we were told at this conference, there was something like, I think the figure was 30 different, no, it may have been 20 or 30 different theories of consciousness. After 30 or 40 years of studying it, there are now 247 different theories of consciousness. But Federico Faggin argues that the reason for this multiplication of ideas is because of people looking in the wrong place, still trying to pin consciousness into something related to the material domain. And he says, no, consciousness is essential. Consciousness is the ground of being. It's irreducible. Consciousness works through the quantum realm. That's something that we may discuss, to influence the way the matter of the brain and body work, but consciousness itself is distinct from matter. And that, to me, I think there's a huge resistance, as there was in me, to understanding that in the scientific community, and in fact the world at large. I would say most people worship science these days because it's done so many wonders for us in some practical terms. But as Faggin says, this neglect of the inner being that the worship of the world outside us has created makes this materialistic science a toxic belief system that he believes depletes us, and that the way back towards a better world is through the rediscovery of this key inner ingredient of reality. Thank you.
Neville, thank you very much for your appreciation regarding my work. Indeed, I try to merge this field of geopolitics where I'm acting in with spirituality, because I think they are not disconnected, they are very much connected. Essentially, we are in the middle, as humanity, in the middle of a spiritual war. What these elites are trying to do is to control humanity through some modalities that are described many times as mind control. Mind control works with mass psychology, And they have different techniques, and maybe the first one is media. The televisions are instruments for mind control of the people. They want to make people not being aware of their potential, spiritual potential. If people would be aware of this potential, we would realize that it is very easy to expand our consciousness, to unite ourselves, I mean, as humanity, and to unite with God. And this would be the end of this dark domination against humanity that is continuing for many hundreds, maybe thousands of years. So thank you again for this appreciation. And regarding myself, I want to say that I started to practice yoga during communism here in Romania. It was in 1989, a so-called revolution, but it wasn't a revolution, it was a coup d'etat. And previously this revolution, yoga and even psychology were forbidden. We were not allowed to practice yoga during communism because, you know, the oppressive regimes don't allow people to be free in their mind and their consciousness. Of course, it was a disillusion after this coup d'etat because the regime that came after it is even worse than what we had in communism. But this is another topic. So I think regarding consciousness, this is the most important topic that we can address. Consciousness was the subject that preoccupied all the spiritual traditions, and now we can see that the frontier sciences are convergent with the traditional path of spirituality. So I would give two examples. For instance, in the Hermetical principles, the so-called Kybalion laws, the first one is that everything is spirit, the universe is mental. And this is a very deep understanding of the universe that is very much in correlation with quantum physics are telling for more than 100 years. And we see that the science evolved from this mechanical point of view when everything was seen as a big wedge with small wheels that connect each other. But this was very physical understanding, paradigm very materialistic. Then through the relativity theory of Albert Einstein, we understood that everything is part of a continuum, matter, time, space, and everything is connected and relative, depends on the observer. And then the quantum physics make a step forward, understanding that the consciousness is the ultimate layer of reality, the substrate, we can say, of everything. Yes, we can see the material universe, but if we go deeper, and physics is already accepting this paradigm, everything is energy. An atom is condensed energy, and everything is energy. But after that, it was another step, and especially quantum physics understood what spirituality said from thousands of years, that consciousness is the ultimate substrate of energy and of everything. So if we have this simple steps of understanding matter, energy, and spirit, consciousness, we already get into a deeper understanding of this correlation between spirituality and science. So I would end this first intervention saying as an overview that the world is a scene created by God, and the creatures, I mean, we as living creatures are created by God with free will, but in the same time, everything is part of a scenario made by God, some lessons that we need to learn. And our spiritual process of evolution is marked by this test, this kind of experience when we have to pass some exams because we are all the time tested if we learned lessons, and they are essentially lessons of love, lessons of becoming from like an atom of consciousness that have the impression it is isolated by the rest, and we then go to the out of the ego, we awake our soul, and we feel that we are connected with nature, with everything. We have empathy. We can recognize that everybody around us is holographic, a part of myself. It is another me that is another conjecture. And then the next step is to realize that essentially we are consciousness. Inside us, there is this spark of God that in Orient it is called Atman, the self. And finally, we realize that the self is all the time connected with the self of God, Atman and Paramatman. So this is the journey that we need to realize in our spiritual evolution. So, in short, this is a first answer regarding consciousness. Ioana?
I understand your vision and working definition of consciousness, and how, on one hand, you are seeing consciousness as being separate from matter empowers us and allows us to choose our thoughts and to create our future. And also, you are saying consciousness is primary, is fundamental, and is the most important function of the soul. You are mentioning the word Atma, the existence that we experience here is through the experience of the soul, is the one that experiences through the sense organs, and is a function of consciousness that allows us to discuss now, to enjoy, or even to disagree with each other. Everything is happening in consciousness. So I would like to hear both of you on your experience of a higher, more elevated state of consciousness. So the aim of a yogi is to raise the level of consciousness, and it is beautifully described in Raja Yoga that the yogi is the one that has no consciousness of the body, of the day, of the night, of hunger or thirst. They take no support of the instruments of happiness, comfort, or anything else. Is that possible in your experience, in your journey? How does it feel? And how do you attain these levels of higher, most elevated consciousness?
So I let Neville answer first to respect the order, but if you prefer, I can answer first as you wish.
Yes, you answer. That's fine. Thanks, Marvin. I'd be very interested to hear your perspective on this.
Okay, so first I want to mention regarding what Ioana said earlier, that I would not say that consciousness is completely separate by matter. I said it's the substrate, the ultimate layer. The matter is made by condensed energy, and energy is made by consciousness. They are not quite separate, but it is a paradox, because in the same time we can say that the universe is real or it's an illusion. Both are at the same time true. And we could say that consciousness has two aspects. One is transcendent and the other one is immanent. In this immanent perspective, it is not separate, it's just the ultimate layer, the deepest one. But in the other perspective, matter does not exist, it is just an illusion. So, as I said, it's a paradox, they are both true. Okay, regarding this this observation from Raja Yoga, I could say, can you hear me? Because someone is calling.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. I would say that this state of consciousness described by Raja Yoga in ancient texts are referring to a very deep state of beneficial state of trance, but also could be high state of samadhi. Samadhi means when you transcend all the senses, the jnanendriyas, at the level of consciousness beyond jnanendriyas. Jnanendriyas are the organs of knowing. And when we transcend this, we could say, disconnected from the physical body, and we are connected with a higher reality. And there are many examples in spirituality with masters that were staying in samadhi for many days or even more, many weeks, and they were not aware of their body. They could not, they could resist without eating. Ramakrishna, for instance, is known that he was meditating and birds came into on his head and make some
Nest.
Yes, and he didn't notice all these signs. They are not disturbed by wind, by cold, by heat, by snow. Absolutely nothing does not disturb such a yogi. It is a state of nirvikalpa samadhi, and as I said, the consciousness of such an yogi is connected with another reality, and they have visions. They are in a state of bliss, and for them, this physical body is almost insignificant. I mean, they don't pay attention to this. Of course, for usual human, this is maybe a madness. I mean, how you can live like this? I mean, the pleasure of life is to go in a trip, to eat, to sleep. But for a very advanced yogi, coming into this state of consciousness is the ultimate goal. I mean, this is the purpose of life, to be in connections with the ultimate truth, with God, with this very high levels of the universe. And I mean here the astral plan, or the causal plan, or even the plan that transcends all the three domains of reality: physical, astral, and causal, and goes into transcendence. Regarding myself, I had some experiences in this domain, but not for very long time, but it was enough for me to understand that if you have this kind of experiences, the perspective about life is fundamentally shifting. I mean, these common pleasures, as I don't know what I said before, have money, a social position, a car, a house, whatever, is irrelevant because everything is passing, how do you say, ephemeral?
Temporary.
Yes. Um, there is something beyond this that is eternal, and this is the goal of life. When you are in connection with this archetypal holographical values, then you can say that you are really happy, and this joy of life is beyond the existence of common people. It is something that cannot be altered by time, by space, by anything, and you are in connection with angels, with God, and you will remain in this state of consciousness even after the so-called death. So this is my answer in this topic.
Very helpful, Marvin. Yeah, the couple of things that you reminded me of. One, just what you just said then about being beyond death. So many, thanks to advances in resuscitation techniques, so many accounts of near-death experiences where people have died clinically, and they've gone into that realm and they're permanently changed very often by that experience of expanded consciousness, when they feel they're part of a whole that somehow throws into complete insignificance the worries or concerns that sometimes have killed them or taken them so close to death, and they come back transformed quite often. So definitely you're talking about a wonderful reality there that that is accessible to many, probably many more than we realize. I think for myself, I connect it to what I've heard the yogis refer to as supersensuous joy. It's a joy that doesn't actually require the body to be experienced. You are in the body, but and I have experienced it. I'm not that concerned. I think perhaps less than you, I know, who I feel is moving very fast towards the angelic. But for myself, although I love that condition and I have tasted it, but I feel that I've quite a lot to do in my engagements in the world, and so I'm not so concerned about that aspiration towards complete self-transcendence, although definitely to be able to experience it from time to time is very empowering. It sort of charges the battery of your well-being in your body when you are able to step beyond it in that way. The other thing I liked very much was your reminder of these two words, immanent and transcendent. They're a part of religious language, and I'd forgotten them. I do tend to forget them, but they're very useful because, and I think they connect to the consciousness that we have when we're in a body, or we're conscious of the body, and the consciousness that we have when we're in that expanded state. You also said something beautiful about how an atom is a point, and yet it has within it this not unlimited, but it has this energy that is a great extension of that point, and how the human soul is similarly, it can be very focused, but it also has this extended form in which it can connect on a much, much wider basis than we normally consider possible when we're trapped in our more limited thinking. So this is something I do aspire towards, to be able to experience that sense of connectedness, which is very much associated with a feeling of love and respect towards others too. As you said, the ego tends to narrow you down, but when you can go beyond the ego to this beautiful transcendent awareness, then there's this sense of expansion and fullness in yourself, which then connects you to the wider world so beautifully. And that is really where our humanity feels fully alive. So in that sense, I really do appreciate and aspire to more of that experience. On the theoretical side, I've puzzled myself somewhat about this consciousness that we speak of when you're conscious or unconscious, like you hit me on the head with a hammer, I go unconscious. And yet then there's consciousness that we say, well, when you leave the body, you're conscious. There's something that you're experiencing. So what's going on here? And there was one of the things that came up at the conference in Barcelona, which I'd previously been a bit dismissive of, was a theory by Sir Roger Penrose, who's a very distinguished British physicist, who wrote a book some decades ago now, I think 20 or 30 years ago, called The Emperor's New Mind. And he's one who has argued for a long time that that consciousness is something that we need to study. It's a bit of a mystery, but it's definitely something more fundamental than orthodoxy had allowed, or even allowed it to be considered. Orthodoxy, it just really, most neurologists, most doctors are trained to understand consciousness as an emergent property of the brain. Well, in one sense, perhaps it is, in the sense that there is Penrose, working with an anesthesiologist, Stuart Hameroff from the States for many years now, has elaborated a theory that inside one of the billions of neurons, brain cells that are in our bodies, and in other cells in the body too, but especially neurons, each of those individual minuscule cells has countless microtubules, which are filament-like structures, which his maths and his physics told him could be a region where the quantum laws operate, because quantum phenomena occur at a very, very refined level, that you don't see them in the gross classical world of matter. They're there, but you don't see them. And but in the brain, there are these countless microtubules, and his theory is that consciousness is something separate from the body, but that it's when our brains are equipped, we have body cells equipped with these microtubules, these can bring consciousness into our conscious awareness. So the consciousness is not coming from the brain, it's coming from another dimension, but the brain is enabled to act as a receiver by these microtubules, just like a radio picking up a BBC broadcast. The BBC broadcast is not in the radio, but it's coming from elsewhere. Similarly with our consciousness, we exist in a dimension that is distinct from the brain, but the brain can act as a receiver, and in fact a channel for the consciousness that is relevant to the role that I'm playing. Bodies actually narrow down our consciousness. They give us a specific role in the play of life. If we were all walking around with a sort of unlimited consciousness that people experience when they leave the body, these near-death experiences, then we wouldn't be much use, actually, because that unlimited consciousness would be very confusing if we had to boil an egg or, put on our socks or something like that. So these microtubules enable us consciously to learn how to live. And this I find a very useful idea now. I heard him explaining it in the conference in Barcelona. It's a useful idea because the anaesthetist he's worked with has shown that the anesthetics that work actually temporarily block the action of these microtubules. So that's how you can be anesthetized, even though you're still in the body, but you're not aware. You'll lose your awareness, your conscious awareness, when these microtubules are blocked. And similarly, every living creature, even a single-celled mycelium, or some of these tiny single-celled creatures, they actually have microtubules too. So again, it's a mechanism that they're speculating, it's not proven, but they believe is responsible for giving life forms a sense of purpose, which comes from that deeper dimension, which is a very fascinating way of looking at it. And then what your sages and your saints who train themselves to go right beyond the body into that broader realm are doing, they're experiencing that much wider field of consciousness, which we also refer to as consciousness, because it is purposive, it is causal, it's where a sense of meaning lies, the meaning even for the single-celled creature. It knows how to, scientists have been astonished that these single-celled creatures can learn. They've got only this one cell, they've got no brain, but they learn. That if you put them in a kind of maze, they learn how to go quicker towards warmth and heat, which that single-cell creature wants. So they learn, and the learning is in consciousness. It's not recorded in the brain, but the microtubules in the single cell may be the mechanism whereby that single cell can act as a receiver for consciousness. So this is actually, they're really, I think, making some progress in this area. I found this quite suggestive and helpful.
Yes. If Ioana wants to ask something else, very well, or I want to add something regarding this process of awakening consciousness. So
Please go ahead, Marvin.
thank you, Ioana. So I think basic idea to understand is this evolution in spirituality means to go from this level of being like an atom of consciousness, as I previously said, to an expansion, gradually expansion of consciousness. So we will get to biggest and biggest state of coherence with everything. And on this path, we have three levels, from certain classification. And the basic level for a human is the ego. When we stand in our mind and we think what to do, and we have this discriminatory dialogue in ourselves. The next phase is to awaken our soul. This is a very important level, and I can come with some details even at the level of ego. But first, I want to say very shortly, awaken of soul is when you already feel this connection with the exterior. I mean, it is not a very clear border between me and exterior. I start to be connected with nature, with the sky, with flowers, with trees, with animals, with all the other people. I can recognize that something deep from myself is in everything. And that's why I start to love everything. And it is a process of coherence with the inner world with outside the world. And then the most advanced level is when we get into the state of revealing ourself, our Atman. Atman is beyond manifestation. We realize that we are pure consciousness, that we exist from the beginning of time to the end of time, for eternity. So Atman has no problem with time, is beyond time. And in this state of consciousness of being the self, we are like a witness that is not touched, not influenced by anything. So we are always present and we always see what is happening, even in our previous lives. And this is forever. So I would like now to add some details to these 3 steps. At the level of ego, we can recognize that we are doing some imaginative projections. So we don't really feel the exterior. We just make some representations in our mind about how the exteriors would like. It's like a map of reality that we are doing with our ego. And that's why we have a very big receptivity to the models that society is influencing us. And if on TV we see a happy life is if you have money, if you have, you are director of a company or such things. If you have a
Big
house,
car, big
big car.
car.
So we don't really we don't really make considerations with our consciousness. We just take some models that are put in our consciousness through education, through media, and so on. So that's why from time to time we have so-called disappointments. So, for instance, when you get into a relationship with as a man with a woman, in the beginning I have some projection of my imagination that this is the most beautiful and most wonderful woman ever. But after a while, I can see that my imagination is not connected with reality, and I am disappointed. And I start a new relation, and this process is repeating because I don't really feel the soul, the essence of that woman. I just see the exterior. So this is like a relation in a square in which there are 4 participants. It is me, the woman, my projection about the woman, my representation, and her representation about myself. She could be disappointed by myself. So it is just a generic example, but it is relevant. But at the next level, when you awake your soul, you don't have only representative projection of imagination, because you start to feel something deeper. You are connected with a deeper reality, with the soul. And when I meet a woman, I can feel her soul, and she can feel my soul. So that's why this kind of relationship at the level of soul is like a triangle. It is me, she, and our soul together. When I hold her in my arms, I can see I have everything. I don't want anything more. But it is not only regarding a couple. If you take a little dog in your hands, you can feel the dog's soul, or a cat, or a flower, or a tree. You are connected with the soul of manifestation. It is something that is common, something very deep that exists everywhere. So I can recognize myself in everything. And this is a state of happiness because I am connected. And at this level, you can feel the archetypal values, the universal values. For instance, you can feel that you have some ideals in your life, and you are able to give up to your life, even to sacrifice yourself for this ideal. For instance, for justice, for love, for harmony, for doing good without recompense, without awareness. So this is another type of living. And this elite that I was talking in the beginning are very much frightened of people to get onto this level of consciousness, to awaken their soul. If we live in ego, in fear, and we just are very easy to manipulate with the media and with the educational system, for them it is very easy to control us. But when we are able to give up to our lives, even to our life, for the benefit of humanity, for God, we don't make compromises anymore, and we are not afraid of death, of anything. We have no fear, so they cannot control us. And let's go to the next level. The next level is the one of pure consciousness, where we become aware that we are Atman, we are the self, we are a spark of divinity. So, of course, we don't only love everybody, we are even love itself. I mean, we love everything, and we are beyond everything. And as I said before, we are aware that we exist forever. We are never dying in our consciousness. We are like a screen, and the events are projected on a screen, but the screen is never affected, like in a cinema. Um, Even we see a big fire or a big flood or a storm, everything, the screen is never affected. When the movie stops, the screen is the same. It is the same with Atman. Doesn't matter what is happening, the screen, the Atman is never affected. It is always in this state that the wise man described in spiritual tradition as Sat Chit Ananda, pure existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss, pure beatitude. So this is the evolution in spirituality, and I repeat, we go from this atom that lives in the illusion that is separated by everything, in fear. Then we come to this level when we are one with everything. We are in unity, in coherence, in love, and even beyond manifestation in this state of Atman. So this is what I
Thank
wanted.
you. Thank you, Marvin. Thank you. I'm aware of time. You made a very beautiful argument, very beautiful presentation. Let's hear from Neville final words, and then we can finish with a few minutes of meditation.
Okay. Hello. Yes, I'm here. One of the things I'd like to put on the table, even though we're running out of time for this particular conversation, is the idea that as well as that evolution back towards that truth, there is in history an evolution away from that truth. The original condition that Marvin's referring to as the Atma, that is that total self-awareness, where love and joy are present within the living entity. But even though that is always a reality in an eternal sense and an original sense, but it's the experience of humanity that we don't always experience that joy and that freedom. And as he said, it's the narrowing of consciousness that takes us into the ego more and less in contact with that deeper, most beautiful self that lies behind this phenomenon of loss of consciousness, loss of humanity, actually. So that you have predators who are trying to exploit others, you have weak people who are easily exploited, and you have a lot of very unpleasant things actually going on in the world. So I'm now one of those who believes that it hasn't always been like that, that contrary to the idea that we are, which science, many of those who believe strongly in materialistic science think we're on an upward journey towards a greater and greater future, perhaps colonizing the stars or the planets elsewhere, I feel I've bought into the idea that was revealed to me through my study with the Brahmakumaris, that actually the world begins in a sort of wheel of time. The world begins in a state of perfection, an age of truth, Satyug, an age of truth, where everyone is in that beautiful state that Marvin was describing. It's a world where the charitable, the ultimately human and loving and extended and non-egotistical nature of life is present everywhere, and just a life of a real joy, paradise, really, that this actually exists. It's not a myth. When I first heard this story, I thought, beautiful fairy story. But now to me, it makes a lot of sense that on a wheel of time, in this great play of existence, that's how we begin. And then through time, it's a bit like a spiritual entropy, through the energy dissipating from its original powerful self-awareness into something that gets caught by things outside, we gradually lose that true self-awareness. And as that loss accelerates, we look increasingly to try to get the joy back again, but outside ourselves, because we increasingly lose sight of where that real freedom lies. So we think it might lie in a bigger car, in a promotion at work, in a bigger bank account, in a beautiful woman, whatever it might be. And that accelerating loss of truth has taken us into a world of more and more unhappiness. There is, of course, a lot of goodness in the world. The bravery with which people face everyday existence is amazing. There's a lot of joy, there's a lot of freshness, there's still beauty in the world, but there is also a lot of suffering. And I believe it's due to a process that has happened like this, that contrary to the evolution upwards that the scientists believe we've been experiencing, we've actually been gradually losing that truth. That it's given to us by nature at the beginning. It doesn't have to evolve through billions of years. It is there at the beginning, and we gradually lose it, and that's okay, because actually in time the discomfort of the loss of truth pushes us to make steps to get out of that illusory state and back to the original. And I believe a process like that is going on. So there is an upward evolution of consciousness taking place now, as Marvin was describing, but there are also these downward trends of exploitation and weakness and addiction. And there's a kind of battle going on, but I also feel totally convinced that this is how things are, this is nature, and that ultimately it will bring us back to that perfect state again. That this is a never-ending play, and it has its own beauty, even within the bad, so-called bad parts. They just like a disease sometimes can snap you out of a wrong consciousness. You've been living in a wrong way, you've been damaging a joint, you need some correction in some area of your life. Disease can help in that regard. And similarly, I think what's going on in the world now is a kind of huge awakening. There is suffering, it's accelerating, but it's also causing millions to awaken, to look more deeply at what has been happening in ourselves and in the wider world, and see what we can do to get back to something where our humanity really flourishes again. So I feel very positive about it, but there is that downward element going on as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Neville, and thank you, Marvin. What a beautiful, beautiful discussion. And it's, I feel, a positive a point to finish with this journey of consciousness and the return to our perfect original stage of consciousness, which is peace, truth, love, bliss, and wisdom. So let's share for a couple of minutes this vision of a peaceful future of humanity. And let's do that in silence. And together, let's see that beautiful new world full of love and filled with happiness.